Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Please. Oh, yes, I love questions.
Yes, apparently Jordan really likes questions, so make sure you ask questions. So let me tell you a little bit.
It gets the conversation flowing. It's always...
Oh, absolutely.
Back and forth.
Yeah, I really enjoy the interaction as well. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Jordan Sather is a 27-year-old truth seeker and activist hailing from the Pacific Northwest. After a brief college stint, he worked a variety of positions in the natural health field for 6 years. Recently, he has ventured into online media in order to diversify his message to include all hidden scientific, political, and spiritual information he believes humanity needs to know. He shares his perspectives online through his Destroying the Illusion YouTube channel, which has garnered over 77,000 subscribers and 7.7 million views in only 11 months, and on Facebook and Twitter. So without further ado, let me welcome Jordan to the show. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
I am doing well. As well as we can be going through all this technical.
Yes, right. Well, I appreciate it. I thank you so much for having patience and tolerating the beginning of the show. Anyway, so first of all, I want to say congratulations. I'm pretty impressed that you've got so many viewers, so many subscribers over the last year. That's pretty impressive. I do want to ask you though, how much of that has been demonetized?
You know, it's interesting because doing the YouTube thing, I've really gotten to see exactly how the analytics works and what the expression's like firsthand. And these days, it's basically every single video that I post is demonetized, live ones, not live ones. But it's interesting because it'll get demonetized instantly, but then it might get a few thousand views and it'll remonetize, and sometimes even go back and forth. Or it just stays demonetized. So it's, you know, you never know. But you do kind of know. You're like, I think this subject's going to demonetize me, and this subject won't. But yeah, it's pretty much everyone.
That's pretty interesting. You know, the last two videos I put up, the same thing happened. They were demonetized immediately. And then, of course, I put in a review or whatever, review application or whatever, and they put it back. And I mean, it was things like Brian Forster, you know, talking about ancient aliens and the elongated skulls of Peru, and they demonetized that. It's crazy.
Yeah, recently I actually had a legal notice emailed to me from YouTube about one of my videos, and they gave me I didn't get a copyright strike or anything like that against my channel, but it was like a legal complaint where they no longer are showing this one specific video in a list of like 40 countries. And it was interesting because we're going to talk about this today, but it was about space wars. I was discussing a lot of weird stuff going on in space and space programs and all that, and it's actually legally banned in like 30 or 40 countries. I was shocked.
Really? Wow. Yeah, I don't think they know what they're doing yet with those analytics, but anyway. So.
They know very well.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you know. So, Jordan, you obviously have got your eyes open. You've been awakened to something that's going on. Tell us a little bit about your story. How'd you end up? First of all, how'd you end up awakening to this stuff and leading you to the work and the motivation to want to share this information?
Yeah, getting out of fantasy land, taking the red pill, definitely, or taking the learning to take the red pill every single day, really. Yeah. But I guess the story begins. I graduated from high school. You know, I'm only 27, so it was about 10 years ago. I graduated from high school, and I did the standard thing that all teenagers are supposed to do when I went to college. And when I went to college, I went there for a career or a subject that I just didn't care about. And of course, I went to a pretty party-hardy university. So naturally, I failed out of college the first year, went to a community college, and was just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And I serendipitously, very synchronistically, weird way how I got this job, and I got a job at a local health food store. And it was a very busy, very renowned, it was a great store. And I then dropped out of college to work at this health food store. And by working there, I was opened up to the total, alternative side, the opposite side of the health industry. So I began to learn about things like Dr. Max Gerson, different doctors that have been suppressed throughout history. I learned about fluoride, vaccines, GMOs, suppressed cures for cancer, what's really going on in that whole field. And that's what first blew my mind. But at the very same time, this is about 2011. This is about 6-7 years ago. But I also became hungry for truth in every rabbit hole, not just that side of things. So luckily, the people I worked with were aware of some of the realities of what's going on in this world as well. So they helped me a little bit go down some paths. And then I myself just went down everything. I started studying the financial system. Oh, my gosh, the controllers of this world. But I was also studying free energy and consciousness and extraterrestrial truths and just every single thing I could. And spirituality even. And this led to a huge awakening experience in a very short time. Because some people's it draws out, some people's it's much more manageable, and they go through different subjects and they might spend a couple of years learning about these things and they'll get into these things. But mine was all within a few months, and it became very, it was traumatic, as it is with a lot of people. So for a couple of years there, I was, scared to talk about these things. I didn't talk about these things. I went off like social media and definitely had a piece of duct tape in front of my webcam. And,
Yep.
And that was a couple of years. But come 2015, 16, I just became more confident in speaking about these things. And then a little over a year ago, probably towards the end of 2016, I became sharing more of these truths through, I guess, wrote for a few blog articles, or a few blogs, wrote some articles. But, and I originally started a YouTube channel that I actually wanted to be a health channel, but then just everything naturally flowed, and the way the universe basically just pushed me, got into doing this YouTube channel basically about everything instead of just health. And I help now with my YouTube channel just try to connect dots for people, try to help people understand things differently, try to help people relax, especially because this world's crazy. So I want to be there to tell people like, hey, it's okay. I know these things are happening and you're finding out these things that are scaring you, but all of this information you're learning, raising your consciousness is going to empower you to break free, break your mind free of the mold.
Yes, absolutely. And I've got to tell you, I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about not being afraid, because so many times, so many of us, I went through the same thing myself. I had my awakening, my second awakening, I'll say, my geopolitical awakening back in 2004, like around during the Ron Paul revolution time. That was kind of when I jumped in. And
yeah, that's awesome. I loved Ron Paul.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great era. That was a great era for, the truth seekers. And actually, that was, probably the highlight of the truther / light workers, starseed movement. Everybody was getting along. Everybody was nice. But, I have my issues with the truth movement nowadays with the whole hatred and bigotry stuff. But as far as the work, I think it's very important, because what you're saying, I like what you're saying, because you're talking about that fear. A lot of people do get stuck in that fear. They get stuck in that low vibration and that low, like, oh, they're coming to get me. They're coming to get me. And they're afraid to do anything. I remember during the Occupy movement being told, oh, you shouldn't do that. They're going to know who you are. They're going to come after you. And it's like, well, you can't change anything by being afraid. So I really appreciate the fact that you said you got through it. So what are some of the things that you did to get past that fear of, oh my God, they're gonna, I can take the tape off my camera, so to speak,
I wouldn't say I'm done with the fear. I mean, I still, every single time I'm about to do a live stream video, I pace a little bit and overthink things, but
Right.
you begin to, one thing to get over that, I guess, is, of course, increasing your consciousness. It's understanding, well, there's thousands, if not millions of people around the world now beginning to share their truths. So are they really going to come after you?
Right.
And then you begin to learn more about, like you said, the geopolitical scene. You realize, like, wow, these elites are actually being taken out and they're completely losing power, which is why the world is getting so chaotic, because they're making things that way to distract people from them actually losing power. And, you begin to realize these things like, shoot, I can share my truths. I can post whatever I want on Facebook. Nobody's going to come after me. Nobody's going to do harm to me. And the thing is, as long as if you're beginning to do this work and beginning to become a spiritual activist or a truth activist, as long as you keep yourself pure, keep your intentions pure, and you don't let yourself be taken off path or compromised by anything. Fear is natural. Fear is a natural thing of going head on into a challenge, and everybody's going to have it. But it's all about quashing that self-doubt with courage. But if you quash that self-doubt, begin to be taken off your path by things that serve your ego much more than your soul, then that's what allows the dark forces to come after you. That's what literally authorizes it energetically. So just keep yourself pure, don't be scared, and say what you want to say.
Absolutely, and you said it beautifully. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bunch of topics that we want to cover, and I really don't know where to start. Let's
Start.
Well, you know what? What's on your mind today? What have you been focusing on? What have you been working on the last 24 hours, 48 hours?
I mean, really, I follow, of course, the news. Anybody that watches me on YouTube knows that I'm half like news reporter, but I do it kind of subjectively, objectively, which is helpful, actually. It helps a lot of people kind of understand it, but I also have to be very careful and be like, this is just my own thoughts. I don't know the absolute truth to anything, but lately definitely what's been on my mind is things blowing up in the news, and that is this whole UFO quote disclosure. In my opinion,
Yes.
It's a very managed disclosure with agenda, but it is this Pentagon program that's being blown up in the media about their supposed UFO investigative project that ran from 2007 to 2012. It was a small one in relative terms to other, what I would say, space projects that they have blackened, but it was only a $22 million program. And, as anybody that's turned on CNN or the New York Times or anything like this has been front page stuff. And this is unheard of in the UFO community, but especially even in the mainstream. It's like, wow, something is absolutely going on with this because of what they're saying and how extensive this is getting covered.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, actually, when I saw that. I think I finally saw it about 2 or 3 days ago, and I had to take a double look. I was like, no, this isn't. I thought there was like one of these, like, false news, fake news blogs or something like that, the fear propaganda blogs. And I'm like, whoa, this is like everywhere. This is all over the news. And I had to take a double look, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. So how much are they saying? Is it the Pentagon that's working on their version of the UFO or connecting with UFOs? I only got to scan it briefly.
So what they were saying is that this program that they were discussing was called the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, and it ran for about 5 years, 2007 to 2012, and it was basically a program to investigate like what they call aerial threats now, which is basically UFOs.
Ah.
And that's what they were, releasing to the media and discussing as if it was, black money and is a Pentagon secret program. So what they're doing is they're trying to legitimize this issue on a mainstream level. because for decades, the topic of extraterrestrials and UFOs has been highly ridiculed, and it's done so to keep people from really looking into it. But now it's amazing that they're saying, oh, the Pentagon's looked into it. So they're making the mainstream look into it now. Like, take this seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you look at the strings that are behind these disclosures and, who's doing them and what initiative it's for, there's a lot of weirdness. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and it just kind of reeks. It really does reek. And then when you begin to research the secret space program and, of course, the extraterrestrial issue deeper than just the tiny little drops they're giving us on the mainstream, you begin to realize, wow, there's not just $22 million lost in the black projects. There's hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. And, they've actually figured out the gravity equation. They've understand how to control gravity for 50, 60 years now. So there's much larger truths they're not telling us. And this initiative, these disclosures coming out that look official, are, of course, managed for an agenda, like I mentioned earlier.
It's very interesting you bring that up. Managed for an agenda. I really like that.
Yeah.
I was having a Facebook discussion with one of my friend fans who's been following me around on my Facebook page for a while, and he was talking about how many activists are pulled into doing something they think is for the right reason, and they're just being managed in order to benefit the empire, for lack of a better term. So it's very interesting how you brought that up. I really I appreciate that observation. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and it's being done at a very specific time, and this is a card basically the deep state or the elite, like human farmers, whatever you want to call them. Everybody has different names, but it's a card they've been waiting to play because their time is drawing so close, so near. So this is actually a great. It's a bad thing because there's very questionable people bringing these disclosures out, but it's a great thing because they're losing so much power that they're having to play this card, and
that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a false flag disclosure is one way you can paint it.
I see. Well, it looks like we're up on a commercial break, and just hold your next thought because we're going to continue talking about the disclosures, government and or otherwise, and we'll be right back after this break. Space program. And I was wondering, Jordan, what are your thoughts on how this program got started? And not necessarily the one in the Pentagon, but we always hear about the other secret space program. What do you think is the intention behind that?
So these programs have a very actually crucial history to understand, and they all actually originate not in America, but in Germany during a little pre-World War II, actually, in the 1920s and 30s. And keep in mind, we're talking about modern space programs. There's actually extensive research on ancient space programs, too. You could look into, the Vedas with their scripture describing Vimanas, and many cultures around the world actually have flying boats and flying ships and whatnot in their scripture. But, let's talk about modern space programs. So that actually originates in Germany, and there's multiple different ways it originated. And I don't necessarily like the term secret space program as a singular. I prefer it as a plural because there's many different programs that have some have overlapped, some have stayed separate. It's a very kind of deep, interesting issue. But some programs actually began in Germany in the 1920s and 30s, and like I mentioned, in a few different ways. So there was one way it started was that there was a very astute scientist. His name was Victor Schauberger, and he grew up in Austria and studied water. He actually studied the way water moved and studied a force known as implosion, which implosion works in a way of basically like geometry, sacred geometry, and it's the natural form of energy flow. Like you've heard of the torus, of course, I'm sure many of these listeners have heard of that shape. That's kind of the natural shape of energy flow, and he studied implosion instead of explosion. But anyway, that actually connects directly to gravity. And Victor Schauberger then studied gravity and how you could actually counter gravity through spin, through torsion. Well, anyway, he and his research ended up in German hands, and they had him as part of these projects. There was also the Maria Orsic, the famous Maria Orsic, where she was a channeler, and she was a very gifted psychic, where she was actually able to channel some information from non-terrestrials. And this information was how to essentially construct ships and how to control gravity and basically figure out some certain secrets of the universe in that regard. And her work ended up in the hands of the Nazi SS. And she, granted, she tried to keep her work and the people around her working on programs that weren't for the war effort, but her work ended up getting co-opted and into the hands of some Nazi SS soldiers that developed it out to make, ships and whatnot. And then there's also, we've heard of technology exchanges between the Nazis and actually various extraterrestrial civilizations that were nefarious in nature, that were very malevolent and liked the conquering the Nazis were doing. So these ETs, the Draco and other civilizations, actually traded with the Nazis and gave them some technology. So there's multiple ways they obtained this.
Yeah.
But essentially, during World War II, they built out these programs, and I believe they had a handful of flying craft. And unfortunately, the Germans, they were losing the ground war in Europe because the Allied powers basically just had more men. They had more boots on the ground. They had more tanks, more aircraft. And the Germans had been focusing so much on this advanced esoteric technology, they just didn't have enough of it to win the war. But what essentially occurred during World War II is they took a lot of this technology and this research and development they did and brought it down to Antarctica. The Nazis had a very strong presence in South America, and especially Argentina. And then they also, before World War II, I should say, they sent certain expeditions to Antarctica to begin to explore it and build it out. Because, again, they were very interested in esoteric understanding and in hidden truths. And they took this very seriously. They didn't take the idea of extraterrestrials and bunkers, but like hollow, cavernous areas under the earth, like a hollow earth. They took this stuff very seriously. So they knew about things like the Paris map, a map from the 1500s that actually shows Antarctica to be not even covered in ice. And, a lot of these hidden occult truths they were looking for and they found. So they took a lot of this technology down to Antarctica. They built out some of these under ice caverns into basically bases, Nazi bases. So while Europe, the Nazis were defeated in Europe, they didn't really get defeated in the war. They took their stuff down to Antarctica. And I hope I'm not losing you. It's a
no,
very
not
long,
at all. No.
Story. Great. It's a very long, drawn-out story. But so World War II officially ended, on public record in 1945. It was funny because in 1947 there was a man named Admiral Byrd sent from the U.S. And on public record, it was said that he was sent to Antarctica for a scientific exploration.
Yeah, I remember.
But in what was called Operation High Jump. But the very weird thing is that he went down there with 5,000 men and 40 ships and an aircraft carrier even. And let me tell you don't need 5,000 men for a scientific exploration. So what he actually went down there for is to combat the Nazis. So the Americans actually they found out through spies and their networks that the Nazis took a lot of their stuff to Antarctica. So in 1947, Admiral Byrd set out on this expedition, and he thought he was going to go down there with his 5,000 Marines and take out the Nazis, but the Nazis had developed their craft in time to make them advanced enough to basically wipe out Admiral Byrd's fleet. I mean, when you have craft that can levitate and go essentially transdimensional and fly around at thousands of miles an hour, you're going to destroy some Navy ships and biplanes and whatnot and seaplanes. So Admiral Byrd got crushed. And then the Nazis, through their ability to infiltrate with how well they were at that, they actually were able to infiltrate into the American military-industrial complex because, of course, they had some connections there even during World War II and whatnot. But as you know, the bankers, they fund every war.
Oh, yeah.
So the Nazis were then able to get into America. And then, of course, the bankers, the deep state, or whatever you call them, they merged the Nazi advanced technology with the industrial might of the Americans in circa 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
You know, you hear of Operation Paperclip. Thousands of Nazi scientists were able to come into America. And then that's really the beginning of the American space programs, was circa 50s, 60s. Granted, the Americans actually had extraterrestrial down craft even as early as the 40s, but they didn't know how the heck it worked. They were still trying to like deduce it. Like, what are we doing with all this? They didn't know. But once the Nazi scientists came over that understood, well then, wow, they began to reverse engineer these crafts. The Nazis, of course, brought over their technology they already had, and all of this stuff began going the deep black programs. You'll notice the CIA got set up right after World War II.
Oh, yeah.
The Nazis came over and set that up. That's the OSS Reincarnate. So that's the beginning of these programs, and they've been kept very secret since the 50s and late 40s, 50s. They've assassinated plenty of people for trying to look into it.
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, that's the reason Kennedy was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also on record the trillions and trillions of dollars that have mysteriously been lost from the Pentagon over the past few decades. So if you just put two and two together, here's trillions of dollars being swiped from our budget. Here's the technology we know they have. They have zero-point energy technology. They have Nikola Tesla's papers the FBI took when he died. They have all this secret research that's in these projects. And they have the media and education organizations to control our minds and literally make us believe almost the opposite of what the true science is, and ridicule the whole subject enough to we don't even look into it. You know, we have all these modern psyops, these modern psychological operations, in my opinion, like flat Earth and this whole aliens or demons thing. So people can't put two and two together when it comes to extraterrestrials. Wow, there's good ones and bad ones. Wow, they've been here for a while. Oh, the Earth isn't flat. It's actually circular. It's spherical. You need spherical things to be able to create gravity and angular momentum. And, you know, so it's a huge topic, and it's so exciting to me that it's blowing up right now, and the mainstream is beginning to take it seriously because it's this unique opportunity where we have, as, you know, truth seekers and sharers and spiritual mentors, to help people to begin to see all these things and all these truths and be like, here's this whole reality that's beautiful, but it's kind of scary, but it's not really scary, because once you get past that fear, it's actually liberating, because you're like, oh my gosh, here's the truth. It's so great that I know it now. And I realize that I actually don't know anything, so I'm just going to continue researching and finding out all these wondrous things, you know?
Right on. That's exactly it. You know, I love it, because when I talk to people about, well, let's say UFOs, for example, so many people are excited that, you know, perhaps there is disclosure going on. But if you talk to somebody like many of my how shall I say, purple pill friends, one foot in each, you know, reality. They're like, oh, but I would never want to come face to face with an alien. That would scare the heck out of me. So, you know, there is that human instinct of fear when it comes to seeing something like that, as well as, you know, we're looking at shaking the story, you know, the status quo. That whole thing gets broken, that paradigm shifts, and people really have an issue when it comes to shifting their reality. And yeah, it is scary, but boy, are you right. It's absolutely amazing when you, well, especially if you become a contactee yourself. It's absolutely stunning and unbelievable.
And just for the record, for any listeners out there, I'm not a contactee in physical form. I have absolutely seen UFOs in the sky, giant power-ups, many different kinds of ships. I have had dream contact. It was a very interesting experience, but I had a kind of dream contact, but never physical. Although, yeah, I mean, they're playing. You begin to see how deep the psychological programming has gone, people still have fear surrounding it. Like, I don't even want to think about it or mention it. You know, you begin to think like, wow, every single movie over the past 50 years has painted ETs in a bad light. So no wonder everybody's scared. It's all this deep subconscious programming. But at the same time, there's many positive races that are here, and they are absolutely helping us. And there's plenty of evidence for this. And then what it goes to say, though, the reason that both the nefarious, the bad ones, quote bad, and quote good ones have not shown themselves openly to us is because of that that prime directive, that law of free will. You know? It's the negative ones have controlled through our minds, basically had us control ourselves, and that's made us into very efficient slaves for them. They feed off our negative energy. They literally feed off our fear. But once you begin to realize that and realize, like, oh, the positive ones have been trying to help us for millennia. They put signs and symbols everywhere, even in crops, for us to try and get it. And they've contacted plenty of people to try to have them bring, you know, vision to life.
Yeah.
So it's, there's bad ones, there's good ones. But as long as you set the intention that, you know, I don't want any negative archonic entities to enter my field or enter my space, just put that intention out there and understand that your mind is very powerful. And it, you know, it might seem like, oh, these ETs, they're on an extra density, or they're more involved, they're more advanced, so of course they're going to take over me. That's not the case at all. You absolutely have the power to set the intention, say, nope, no entities in my space. I'm going to open myself up for contact from benevolent beings, and you will feel the energy and make contact. You know, you will start seeing things in the sky and having some pretty interesting dreams, or having some weird synchronicities in your life where you're like, I can't explain that.
Wait till they show up in your bedroom.
Right.
I've been lucky enough to have out of body as well as physical contact with well, I call them my guides, but they call themselves the emissaries of light. And what I love about this whole topic is where you were saying how they keep trying to give us information. My book is about my contact. And everybody says, everyone who reads the book is like, you know, it's amazing how everyone who has contact with these light beings, or whatever you want to call them, it's all the same. It's the same information, but I guess, you know, given in a different way. But it's all basically, be aware of the illusion that is being wrapped around you. Be aware that, you know, the greatest conspiracy is the suppression of human consciousness, and that, you know, it's not all scary aliens. It's all about empowerment and connecting to our, you know, our infinite abilities, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I mean, have you seen the parallels with that as far as what other people are saying their messages?
The message from, can you say that one more time?
Are you seeing like parallels with messages, people who have had contact, basically, you know, saying the same thing? You know, they want to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, they have been helping us for a long time. And I think right now they're stepping up into more direct action than they have in the past, you know. And I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that do involve non-terrestrial species, you know, at a geopolitical level.
Yeah.
From certain things I've heard and whatnot. I think we're very close, you know, because of course we've heard about this whole ascension process, and there's this short window to get on this positive timeline and all that jazz. So it is coming very, very short. And of course the elite of this planet, their ship is sinking, so they're trying to take us all down with them, since they're crying like little babies and haven't gotten their way. So things will definitely heat up if they haven't heated up enough already. And this is what I was gonna say earlier. A lot of people don't believe that the positive ETs are here helping us, because of course you see the world as it is, and you're like, how could there be positive ETs here and not do anything if there's so much chaos and all that jazz? Kind of the same way people say about a anthropomorphic God. Oh, how could a God exist if there's so much evil and whatnot here? And that's because, you know, look at it like a father. There are brothers and sisters from the stars, but they are more evolved than us, and they're waiting for us to get our shit together. And when you know, I have a child, I have a kiddo, and when I want him to get his stuff together, I want him to do it on his own, right? I want him to pick up after himself, tie his own shoes. I don't want to have to intervene if I don't need to. And the goal is to actually get him self-sufficient. And that's exactly what the benevolent ETs are doing with humanity. We're essentially, I don't like to say that us here on Earth, we're an experiment, but it's like a learning ground. It's like a playground experiment. We're here, all of our souls are here to learn in this third density. And the positive ETs, they're nudging us in ways that aren't noticeable. That's why the universe works on synchronicity, is because that's how they nudge us. We don't automatically see it. It's not observant. But for those who have eyes to see and the desire to know, they'll make themselves more open directly. But they don't directly intervene if they don't have to, because they want us to be able to tie our own shoes, basically. So that's why it's imperative that each and every one of us increases our consciousness and tries to increase everyone else's consciousness as much as possible, through any means possible.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Jordan. That's exactly how I feel about that situation as well. I can't help but think about in reference to these secret space programs and the on the flip side of this story, so to speak, how many of the UFOs that have been seen are actually secret space program stuff. Like, I mean, when we first had the, well, you know what I'm saying. How much of it has been created by the Pentagon, and how much of it has been actually extraterrestrial?
Yep, ours or theirs. Anytime you see an anomalous craft in the sky, first thing you think of, ours or theirs.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, that can be, when you're on the ground and you see something in the sky, you're really not going to know. Although I will say, if it is one of theirs, if it is an ET or non-terrestrial craft, sometimes it will play with you. They're very cheeky ETs that might play games with you. So, for instance, I've been to James Gilliland's East Eddy Ranch out near Mount Adams, where there's so much activity out there, and there sometimes we call them blinkers. There's different ways they'll interact. Sometimes you'll see power-ups in the sky where, you'll look and it'll just be this big bright thing for a couple seconds and fade back out into nothing. In that way, you kind of know it's theirs. You're like, that wouldn't be a military craft. Or they'll blink at you, wait a few seconds, blink at you again up in the sky, blink at you again. And they kind of play games, right? You can almost like consciously interact with them. You can actually in some instances.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only way to know it's one of theirs, if you're stuck here on the ground. If you can get close to the craft and actually see it with your own two eyes, physically up close, there's ways to deduce. If you see rivets and lines in the craft and kinds of metal like that's probably one of ours.
Yep.
You can, if you're close to the craft, sometimes it's theirs, because literally these more advanced ascended beings, they can actually create matter with their mind. So there won't be rivets in the craft, and actually the craft around them is like an organic material that they literally think into existence. And that's how they fly around, and it becomes this time-space bubble that they just literally create with their brains.
I love what you said. I believe it was Laura Eisenhower. The first time I ever had her on the show, like 8 years ago. She was. I asked her that question. I said, "How can you tell the difference between a real craft versus one of ours?" She goes, "Well, if it has nuts and bolts, it's probably one of ours." I was like,
yeah, exactly.
And that's a great rule of thumb there. Absolutely. Geez, I can't believe we're almost running out of time here. We probably got about 3 more minutes, but I'm really interested, and we didn't get to cover much on it, but I'm wondering if you could please touch on it, the whole QAnon phenomenon that's happening. I'm always very interested in what's happening on 4chan.
Woo! Yeah, and 3 minutes. How am I going to do this in 180 seconds?
So what is QAnon?
Let me first I'll tell you what 4chan is for those out there who don't know. 4chan is anonymous posting boards on the internet. So anybody can go on 4chan, post wherever they want. It's totally anonymous. You can't find out who did it. So over the years, it's been said that various insiders, whether it's like a White House insider, FBI insider, people that just want to get certain data bits out there to disclose, they'll go on 4chan and post them. Well, at the very end of October, and actually continuing up until now, there has been these posts that have dropped on 4chan. At the very beginning, there were long, long posts to explain more so what it was, and now they're just little tidbits of information, breadcrumbs it's often called. But at the very end of October, they began being posted by this, I don't want to call it a person, could be a group, could be a, it's just, they label themselves as Q. And in my opinion, what this Q affiliation is a group of people you could call the Alliance or the White Hats who are fighting the deep state behind the scenes. And they're going to 4chan via this Q name, moniker, and dropping breadcrumbs and tidbits and data points to basically light a fire under the population's ass, and at the very same time let them know that there is this big war going on behind the scenes, and they can't take to the media or the airwaves or anything like that to talk about it, and they can't give us the direct information or data points because, of course, it's still a war going on. They have to keep secrecy behind it. So there's been all of these interesting, a lot of them are questions. A lot of them are suggestions and inferences and things to really get people to start putting the dots together themselves and then tell the world about it, And it's been amazing to see so many people start coming together, try to research really what's going on, put the dots together, and do that.
Damn. Well, that sounds absolutely fascinating.
Is that all we got?
Hey, do you have more info on that on your website or on your YouTube channel?
I pretty much cover it on my YouTube videos daily.
All right. Well, very good. Everybody, make sure to go to youtube.com, Destroying the Illusion, or jordansather.com. Thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. I will see you next week. Next week is...
You, that was wonderful.